Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, we are from group 6 and today we would like to present about lesson plan. And our members are Nuro wiladyah, Putri Dewan Tari, Khoirul Anam, and Titin ratna sari. And our materials are what is a lesson plan, and the second is type of lesson plan, and the third is element of a lesson plan, and the fourth is contextualize your lesson plan, and the fifth is formulate achievable learning objective, and the last is select relevant assessment practice. Okay, and the first is what is a lesson plan? A lesson plan is a step-by-step outline of a lesson you intend to teach in your classroom. You can use this tool to help execute lesson objectives successfully. A lesson plan or rencana pembelajaran or RPP is the backbone of teaching and learning process. It defines learning goals that students must achieve, materials and activities to support them in achieving the goals, and assessment to measure to what extent they have achieved the goals. Lesson plan lists what the student is going to learn and what you hope they master by the end of the lesson and the steps you are going to take to teach the lesson. It also explains how you plan to assess students to check for their understanding of content. Teachers generally prepare lesson plan in advance and write day-to-day, weekly, or monthly plans. And the next is type of lesson plan. There are many types of lesson plan you can create depending on few factors such how many grade level subject you teach each day and how far in advance you'd like to plan your lesson. Here are 5 different types of lesson plans you might use in your classroom. And the first is daily. Some teachers create lesson plan for each day of week. The duration of each plan is a length of one class period. There are 5 separate lesson plans created for the entire week. Each day has separate objective and small assessment at the end of the day to check for the students' understanding of the day's content to evaluate whether they comprehend the day's objective. And the second is weekly. Weekly lesson plan consists of the one lesson created to last for the entire week. The duration of the plan takes 5 consecutive class periods to complete. Educators teach the content earlier than the week. Students practice using the content on their work midweek, and the teacher assess student understanding at the end. And the third is unit. Some educators prefer to plan an entire unit ahead of time, which can take anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months for them to teach and assess. These lesson plans are more extensive than other plans because they cover a wider range of content. Planning an entire unit can be useful so that teachers are aware of how long a unit is going to take to complete, and so they can pace the lesson according to their class ability levels. And the fourth is content area. Some educators teach more than one subject each day, so they create multiple lesson plans. For example, many elementary teachers teach math, English, science, and social studies throughout the day, and for each of those content areas, they need a different lesson plan. The plan for each content area might be for one day, a week, or entire unit depending on the teacher preferences. And the last is grade level. In secondary classroom, typically grade 6 to 12, some educators teach more than one grade level. Those teachers create different lesson plan depending on what level they are teaching each period. In the morning, a teacher may teach all 6th grade science classes, and after lunch, they might have 8th grade science for the rest of the day. They make specific plan, but each grade is learning different content at varying level of depth.
The next point is about the elements of the lesson plan. Different states and school districts have the various requirements for what they would like to their teachers to include in their lesson plans. You may want to check with your administrations when creating lesson plans so you know what elements they would like you to include. There are 8 general elements that are seen in many lesson plans you may consider using when creating your own lesson plans. The first is the grade level and subject. One of the first sections of a lesson includes the grade level and subject of the lesson you are going to teach. If you share your plans with anyone or your administrations would like to see what if you are teaching, they should know what and who the intended audience of your lessons is and what subject they will be learning. The second is the type of a lesson. This is a brief sections that explain the type of lesson you are going to be teaching. As I mentioned in the sections above, typically a lesson is for one period, 1 week, or contains information for entire units. Many teachers can choose their lesson type depending on their own preference, but some may need to adhere to the rules of their school district. The third is duration. The duration of the lesson plans explains how long your lesson is going to take to complete. If it's a daily lesson plan, it may take the entire length of a typical class period. If it is a weekly lesson plan, it may take the total amount of time you see your students in 1 week. If you are teaching a unit, it might be 20 till 50-minute sessions. You may need to adapt your plans according to the learning styles of your students. The fourth is topic. The topic of your lesson plan consists of what subject you are focusing on for the duration of the lesson. The topic is typically a short section of the lesson plan, as you are just listing the subject of the lesson's focus. For example, if you are teaching science and are focusing on an entire unit, the topic could be the genetics if you are teaching a unit on genetics, but we're creating weekly lesson plans rather than the entire unit at once. The topic for 1 week might be the genetic change. The fifth is objective. The objective is the crucial part of the lesson plan because it is explicitly states the goals students should accomplish at the end of the lesson. Educators generally write objectives in student-friendly terms that children can understand and write those objectives on the board and review them with the students at the beginning of the lesson. This allows students to understand and focus of the lesson and what their goal is by the end. And the sixth is the material. The sections list any materials required of the students and teacher in order to successfully complete the lesson. Typically, materials include specific pages from a textbook, printouts, a writing utensil, paper, and whatever else the students need. Listing materials in your lesson plan allow you to better prepare for the needs of your classroom. The seventh is the direction. This is the sections that takes the most time to complete because it contains minute by minute directions for the lesson. Directions include what you intend to do at the beginning, middle, and the end of the lesson. Some teachers prefer to give the general directions rather than explaining each minute. You can revert to your administration's policy for confirmations on how to complete the directions in your lesson plans. The eighth is the assessment. The end of each lesson usually has an assessment that evaluates the student's overall understanding of the lesson's topic. The assessment can be something as quick as the thumbs up or the thumbs down, or whatever they understood the material, or can be as rigorous as a quiz they are going to have at the end of the lesson period. Teachers usually create the assessment to align with the objective of the lesson so that the students know what they are working towards throughout the lessons. So those all are the elements of the lessons plan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Titin Sari. I will continue the next explanation about contextualization lesson plan. Despite using the same curriculum from the government, schools differ from each other in terms of policy on teaching and learning facilities, and socio-cultural settings. Therefore, your lesson should be planned based on your school's characteristics. You need to set realistic time allotment based on your school policy. The time allotment for the English subject in most public schools is different from the one in many private schools. Thus, you need to be able to adjust your learning activities according to the time allotment given by your school. If you don't do so, your lesson will be over or under time. Besides time consideration, school facilities should be taken into account in designing learning activities. If your school lacks digital technology and the internet, do not include any activities involving these things, or you will end up wasting your teaching time on figuring out how to make your lesson work. Design your learning activities according to the available learning facilities. Student proficiency and their socio-cultural backgrounds should also be considered when planning a lesson. Remember that you teach your students, not yourself. Thus, taking your own point of view for your lesson plan may cause your lesson to be too difficult and culturally irrelevant to your students. What works for you as a teacher does not always work for your students. Therefore, plan your lesson by taking your students' perspective. Your students' learning needs and preference should be taken into account so that what you teach can be meaningful for them.
The next one is formulate achievable learning objective. Learning objectives are defined based on basic competence or competency dasar (KD) from the curriculum. They set the direction of what students should learn and how they are assessed. There are some crucial aspects to consider when defining learning objective. First, learning objective in the lesson plan must be scaffolded. Second, learning objectives should be measurable, meaning that students can demonstrate what is expected in the objective as the evidence of their learning. And last, when formulating your learning objective, you should make its objective achievable, meaning that one objective should only include one specific skill or one aspect of the learning. Select relevant assessment practice. Assessment collect evidence of student learning progress for the purpose of grading or giving feedback for improvement. Assessment results indicate to what extent they have achieved the learning objective. For this reason, your assessment should be designed by referring to your learning objective. Assessment does not only involve testing and grading or assessment of learning. In the classroom situation, you should provide your student with the opportunity to practice their skill and knowledge and get feedback to improve this aspect, assessment of learning. And the next is takeaway. A lesson plan is not a mere document that teacher prepare only for administrative purpose. It is the manifestation of your view on your student and your value on teaching. On your make your student priority, putting yourself in their shoes and focusing on improving their learning experience, your lesson plan will work just fine. I think that's all for our group presentation about lesson plan. So, thank you and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.